Hello and welcome to CAPM Certification course offered by Simplilearn. In this lesson, we will focus on project integration management. Let us begin with the objectives of this lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to define project integration management, identify the key role of the project manager, project team, and project sponsor, explain various project selection methods, describe the project integration management processes. Identify key terminologies used in project integration management. In the next screen, let us take a quick look at the project management process map. There are 47 processes in project management, grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the first knowledge area, that is, project integration management and its processes. In the next screen, let us understand the concept of project integration management. Project integration management involves unification, consolidation, articulation, and integrative actions that are crucial for successfully completing the project. The project integration management is high-level work that project manager does, and it involves managing interdependencies among the other knowledge areas. The other 9 knowledge areas involve detailed work in a specific direction. For example, project cost management deals only with how to manage cost in a project. The project management processes do not happen independently. For example, a new resource added to the project may require changes in cost or schedule or both. In dealing with such situations, the project manager integrates the processes of project management. The need for integration drives much of the communication and the work of the project manager. Let us discuss the key role of project manager, sponsor, and team in the next screen. Project manager, team members, and project sponsors have different roles to play in a project. The project manager is supposed to play multiple roles in the project. The key role is to perform integration. The project manager puts all the pieces of the project together into a cohesive whole. In doing so, the project manager tries to ensure that the project is done faster, cheaper, and utilizes resources optimally while meeting the project objectives. As the project progresses, the team members work on completing the project activities. The role of the project sponsor is to protect project from any unnecessary changes and to ensure that it has the required resources for completion. The project sponsor is the champion for the project within the performing organization, that is, the organization in which the work is being performed. In the next screen, we will cover the project selection methods. An organization can undertake a project under contract with an external organization or take up a project driven by internal business needs. There should be a formal process of selecting project in all organizations to ensure that it is making the best possible use of limited corporate resources. For example, if the organization has an option to take up any one out of the 2 projects, both of which use the same corporate resources, the organization would naturally select the one which is more profitable. There are 2 broad ways to select a project. One way is the benefit measurement method, where one project is compared with other competing projects. Another approach is based on mathematical models, wherein you examine the most optimal selection of projects by trying to optimize a goal. For example, maximize operating profits. Such methods may be called constrained optimization methods. There are different methods under both these categories, and you should be familiar with the names of these methods. Broadly, the benefit measurement methods focus on ascertaining the costs and benefits of undertaking the project. The methods under benefit measurement method include murder board, where a panel of experts shoots down a new project idea, peer review, scoring models, economic models, and benefit compared to cost. The constrained optimization methods rely on mathematical modeling techniques to determine the best selection of projects to achieve certain business objectives. The methods of constrained optimization method include linear programming. In reality, you might not have seen these methods to be followed in project selection. Often, personal relationship with the sponsor may be more important than anything else. This is quite normal, and any organization worldwide works this way. However, as a certified project manager, it is important for you to be familiar with more scientific methods of project selection. A typical question on the CAPM exam could be, what type of project selection technique is peer review? And the right answer is benefit measurement method. You need to understand the characteristics of various project selection methods to answer scenario-based questions. In the next screen, we will focus on the project selection methods. An organization has limited resources. They cannot execute all the projects that come their way. They can take only those projects for execution which are financially sound for the organization. There are various parameters used in making such decisions. Some of these terms are present value, net present value, internal rate of return, payback period, benefit-cost ratio, return on investment, and opportunity costs. Click each tab to learn about the parameters. Present value is today's value of future cash flows. In order to reduce future cash flows to present values, a discount factor has to be applied. What this essentially means is, if a project can give a return of, say, $100 per year, $200 next year, and $250 the third year, what is the value of all these returns today? $250 return in the third year will not be the same as $250 today due to inflation or any other constraint. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Net present value, NPV, is the present value of the total benefits, income or revenue, less the costs over a time. Therefore, if multiple items are involved, add the present value of all of them to arrive at the net present value. Problems where a project has to be selected over other projects on the basis of their net present value can be expected in the exam. Let us take an example of a typical question that we might encounter in the exam. You have two projects to choose from. Project X will take 2 years to complete and has an NPV of $35,000. Project Y will take 5 years to complete and has an NPV of $95,000. Which one will you choose? The answer is Project Y because it has a higher NPV. Do not get confused with longer duration of the project. It is important that NPV be more. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Another term used in evaluating a project is internal rate of return, or IRR. IRR is the rate of discounting at which the present value of costs matches the present value of benefits. It is the rate inherent in the project. Let us look at an analogy to understand the concept of IRR. Consider a project similar to depositing money in a bank account and earning interest. You will prefer the bank that gives maximum interest. Similar is the project. Choose from Project A and B, where Project A has an IRR of 25%, or Project B has an IRR of 15%. The answer is Project A, as the IRR is better for Project A. It is obvious, higher the IRR, the better. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Payback period is the number of time periods it takes to recover your investment in the project before you start making profit on the investment made in the project. You have two projects to choose from, Project A with a payback period of 5 months or Project B with a payback period of 12 months. Which one would you go for? The answer would be Project A. It is evident that lesser the payback period, the better. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Benefit-cost ratio is the ratio of the present value of benefits to the present value of costs. A benefit-cost ratio of more than 1 means that benefits are greater than the costs. If the benefit-cost ratio of Project A is 2.5 and benefit-cost ratio of Project B is 1.5, which project would you select? The answer is Project A, as the benefit-cost ratio is higher in Project A. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Return on investment, or ROI, is commonly used in financial parlance to indicate how profitable a project is. Return on investment is the average rate of return or benefits expected as compared to the initial investment. If a project involves an initial investment of $100,000 and generates an average return of $20,000 per year, it means the ROI is $20,000 by $100,000, or 20%. Higher the ROI, the more profitable the project is. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. Opportunity cost is yet another term used in evaluating competing projects that you might see in the exam. It means the opportunity given up by selecting one project over another. Problems where a project has to be selected over other projects on the basis of their net present value and opportunity cost can be expected in the exam. For example, you may come across a question such as, what is the opportunity cost of selecting Project B if Project A has an NPV of $55,000 and Project B has an NPV of $85,000? The answer is $55,000. This is the NPV of Project A, which was selected over Project B. Click Close to go to the Process Selection Methods dashboard. In the next screen, let us look at the There are 6 project management processes, which are part of Project Integration Management knowledge area. They are the Develop Project Charter, done in the Initiation Process Group, Develop Project Management Plan, undertaken in the Planning Process Group, Direct and Manage Work Carried Out in the Executing Process Group, Monitor and Control Project and Perform Integrated Change Control, undertaken in the Monitoring and Controlling Process Group, and Close Project or Phase done in the Closing Process Group. Let us look at each of these processes in detail. In the next screen, let us understand how to read process-related information. As you can see in the project management process diagram, these elements within the knowledge area represent the inputs from the same knowledge area. These elements represent the inputs from other knowledge areas. These represent the tools and techniques used in the process. These are outputs of the process. These represent the output within the same knowledge area, whereas these outputs are fed into the knowledge areas other than the one that the process is a part of. You can observe that the process in the image is color-coded based on the process group. Initiating Process Group is in yellow, Planning Process Group is in blue, and so on. You can read the processes and their color codes in the legend box on the bottom left of the screen. The process group affiliation is also indicated in the text of the description. It is important to understand the process group context to appreciate what the process does. In the next screen, let us look at the Develop Project Charter process. Develop Project Charter is an initiating process. A project charter is essentially a document that authorizes a project. Once a project has received a charter, it means that the project manager can start employing the organization's resources for the project activities. Let us look at the key inputs to be considered in preparing the project charter. The first input is the Project Statement of Work. This is created by project sponsor, or the customer describing their needs, project scope, and how the project fits into their strategic goal. If the project is taken up under a contract, the request for proposal, that is, RFP, can be considered as Project Statement of Work. The next input is the business case. This document establishes whether the investment in a project is worth, from a business point of view, the business need for the project, and the cost-benefit analysis. It provides important information to the project manager about the goals of the project and the boundaries in terms of the desired results, cost, etc. If the project is being undertaken as part of a contract or agreement, the agreement provides an important input for the project manager that establishes what must be done in the project. The next input to be considered for project charter is enterprise environmental factors. Any project to be executed within the organization has to deal with the organization culture and existing systems. You can consider this as an organization baggage that comes with the project. This is the reason a project being executed in two different organizations may be done differently. Another factor to be considered is organizational process assets. This is a broad term and includes all the organizational processes, procedures and policies, corporate knowledge base, and historical project information. Every organization develops a set of processes, procedures, and policies that are based on the best practices learned by the organization over time. The historical information includes past project management plans, risks, lessons learned, etc., of similar projects executed. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques used in this process. The first technique is expert judgment. Expert judgment is an invaluable input to the process of formally authorizing a project, because an expert can provide insights into why a project makes business sense or why it does not. From experience, they may be able to shed light about the validity of the business drivers, feasibility, assumptions, and constraints that need to be considered for the project. Facilitation techniques is another technique used. The chartering process is often a collaborative activity involving many influential stakeholders in an organization. Facilitation techniques help bring all these stakeholders together and engage in fruitful discussions in order to arrive at an informed decision whether to go ahead with a project or not. The only output of this project is the project charter. Let us try to understand what the project charter might contain. The project charter usually contains the high-level project requirement, and it should be created by the project sponsor and handed over to the project manager. The project manager can do the groundwork to prepare the project charter, but it must be signed by the project sponsor or somebody in the performing organization who is higher in authority than the project manager. It is important to point out that a project charter is not a project management plan. The detailed risk, schedule, cost analysis, etc. is part of the project management plan and should be done during the project planning phase, when there is more detail on the availability of the project to do so. The charter should be sufficiently high level to accommodate the minor changes that might arise in the project. In the next screen, let us discuss the second process under Project Integration Management, Develop Project Management Plan. This is the process of documenting the actions necessary to define, prepare, integrate, and coordinate the subsidiary plans. Examples of subsidiary plans are Project Time Management Plan, Project Cost Management Plan, Project Human Resource Management Plan, etc. The Project Management Plan does not just describe when the project would start, what activities should be done, and when the project would get over. It is a detailed document and describes how the project would be executed, monitored, and controlled, and closed. Many people think that project schedule developed using Microsoft Project is the project management plan. However, that is not true. Project Management Plan contains all the subsidiary plans and their baseline value. It also contains the allowed variance in the baseline value. Performance measurement baseline of project's time is the total of project baseline time and the agreed time variance for the project. For example, the Time Management Plan section would have mentioned the time taken by a project. The period mentioned in the Project Management Plan is 180 days. This 180-day period is also called the baseline time value. Therefore, the baseline value is the initial agreed value in the project management plan. So, if the time variance agreed in the plan is 10%, the project should be executed in maximum 180 plus 180 multiplied by 10% is 180 plus 18, which is 198 days. Whether the baseline time value should be 180 days or 300 days is decided by analyzing the project activities, and it should not be decided arbitrarily. In the next screen, let us look at the various inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques of this process. Let us look at the inputs considered in developing the project plan. Project charter from the previous process is an important input. The other inputs include output of the other planning processes, because the project management plan is supposed to integrate all of these plans. The examples of other plans are time management plan, cost management plan, and quality management plan, etc. All of these plans are developed over a period as the project progresses. These will be discussed in detail later in this tutorial. In addition to these, enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets are also inputs to developing the project management plan. In fact, these two factors have more influence in developing project management plan than in developing project charter. It is recommended that you understand these inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques clearly, as most of these will be repeated in other processes as well. The two tools and techniques employed in this process are expert judgment and facilitation techniques. The very obvious output of this process is the project management plan. In the next screen, let us look at some of the key terms which are crucial in understanding these processes. Let us look at a few key terms to understand project management processes. The first is the work authorization system. There should be a formal process of authorizing work within the project. So, be it internal team members or project contractor, there should be a formal process of giving go-ahead to start work on the project. The next two related terms are corrective and preventive action. You will come across these terms throughout this PMP tutorial. Corrective action is any action taken to bring expected future project performance in line with the project management plan. For example, if a project milestone is delayed, as a corrective action, you include additional resources to ensure that the final project deadline is not delayed. While corrective action involves implementing actions to deal with actual deviations from the performance baselines, preventive action deals with anticipated or possible deviation from performance baselines. For example, to ensure that projects are not delayed, you do a proper estimation of the work and assign enough resources to the project so that they are not delayed. A very important system that needs to be established early on in a project is the change control system. Since projects are executed in a dynamic environment, it is quite natural to expect changes in the project requirements. The change control system is the formal documented procedures, paperwork, tracking systems for authorizing changes. Therefore, the change control system analyzes each of the incoming change requests and decides whether to accept the change request or reject it. A configurable item is any product, service, or result within the project whose characteristics need to be identified, documented, and placed under change control mechanism. Examples of configurable items are project documents, source code, physical parts such as tools, recommended settings for machinery, etc. When a formal configuration management system is put in place, it is essentially establishing a control system that can preserve the characteristics of these items. Now, let us look at the next process of the project integration management knowledge area, which is direct and manage project work. Direct and manage project work is the process of performing the work defined in the project management plan to achieve the project objective. This process marks the performance and completion of activities in a project. The input to this process is obviously the project management plan, since the project is executed as per the project management plan. The other inputs to this process are any approved change requests that need to be implemented. These could be in the form of corrective or preventive actions upon which the team has decided to work. The other two inputs are enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Let us look at the tools and techniques. Expert judgment is an important tool used in this process as well. Another technique is the Project Management Information System, or PMIS. The PMIS is a combination of documents, dashboards, software tools, etc., where the data and information related to the project gets collected as the work is being done. During execution, it is natural to expect that plenty of meetings will take place among the team members and among other stakeholders as well. There are several outputs from this process. Project deliverables are produced. As the deliverables are being produced, there would also be data related to the project performance that will be generated, such as what was done, how long did it take, how much did it actually cost, etc. Along with these key outputs, there are changes that new change requests may emerge. This could be because, during the execution phase, the team or the stakeholders may realize that what is being produced is not meeting the expectations or needs and that something else may need to be done. In the process, project documents and project management plan get updated. Let us look at monitor and control project work in the next screen. Monitor and control project work is the process of tracking, reviewing, and regulating the progress to meet the performance objective or objectives defined in the project management plan. Now, the estimated time performance measurement baseline is 180 days and 10%. The monitor and control project work is the process area that tracks whether 180 days and 10% time performance baseline is being met or not. Let us also look at the key inputs for the monitor and control project work process. Project management plan is the key input, as the performance measurement baselines are part of the project management plan. The other key input to monitor and control project work is work performance information. It is the status of the project, that is, the status of the project deliverables, the cost incurred, the time elapsed in the project, etc. Along with the work performance information, forecasts related to the cost and time form important inputs upon which the project manager has to act. Validated changes confirms that the approved changes have been appropriately incorporated. Enterprise environmental factors and organization process assets are also inputs to this process. Expert judgment, analytical techniques, project management information system, and meetings are the various tools and techniques. One of the outputs of this process area is change requests. Change requests could be in the nature of corrective and preventive actions or defect repair. If the performance measurement baselines are not being met, this process ensures that project manager takes appropriate corrective and preventive action to get close to the performance measurement baselines. Along with the recommended corrective and preventive action, monitor and control project work also results in identifying defects, which must be taken care of. During the defect repair process, many reports related to the performance of the work of the project will be produced. Project management plan and project documents are also updated. In the next screen, let us focus on Perform Integrated Change Control process. Perform Integrated Change Control is the process of reviewing all change requests, approving and managing changes to the project deliverables, organizational process assets, project documents, and the project management plan. This is where all the recommendations for changes, corrective actions, preventive actions, and defect repairs are evaluated across all the knowledge areas and either approved or rejected. The inputs to this process are similar to that of the monitor and control project work process. Project management plan, work performance reports, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets. The only additional input is the change request, since the Perform Integrated Change Control process is supposed to take care of managing the incoming changes. To make a judgment about the change requests, project management plan and the work performance reports are also referred to. Another important tool and technique used in this, along with expert judgment and meetings, is change control tools, and most important among them is Change Control Board. The team takes up the ownership of analyzing each of the incoming changes and also does the impact analysis for the changes, and finally approves or rejects a change. The project manager, project sponsor, and a few of the important stakeholders and team members may be part of the Change Control Board. The process should produce change requests that are approved, a log of change requests processed, requests that were either approved or rejected, and a few updates to the project plan and other documents. Change management and change control is the theme recurring in many questions in the examination. You can expect questions in the exam which test a project manager's response to a particular change in the project. In the next screen, let us take a closer look at functioning of this process. Now, let us look at the process of change. First, the project manager should determine that a change has either already occurred or if the change is necessary. One of the important qualities of a good project manager is that they will push back on unnecessary changes. The next step is to evaluate its impact on the project in totality. The team needs to understand what would be the impact on the time, cost, quality, risk, resource requirements, and so on. Once the impact is known, the project manager along with the team should look for various possible options to accommodate the change. For instance, in order to accommodate an increase in scope, it may be necessary to extend timeline, add resources, increase budget, or a combination of the above. Once the impact analysis and exploration of possible options are completed, the project manager should present it to internal as well as external stakeholders for their approval. It should be presented to internal stakeholders first, because the management of an organization may decide to absorb the change within the project's reserves without opting to bill the customer. If the project will have an impact on the agreed baselines of time, cost, scope, and quality, one needs to get in touch with the external stakeholders and the customer. These steps are an important aspect of a project manager's job, and the ability of a project manager to manage change will be tested in the CAPM examination. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Close project or phase is the last process of the project management integration knowledge area. This process ensures that the project or a phase is formally closed after completion. Remember that PMI expects a mature organization and a trained project manager to be diligent in following closure formalities. Without going through the formal closure formalities, the project cannot abruptly be closed. The project should be formally closed, even if it is terminated due to some problem. The key input to this process is the accepted deliverables. The deliverables have to be brought into a state that they can be properly transitioned. Transition means they are handed over to the organization or group that will be responsible for operations, maintenance, and support. The other inputs are project management plan and organizational process assets. Expert judgment, analytical techniques, and meetings are the commonly used tools and techniques. The closure of a project or phase results in a product, service, or a transition. In the process, one of the important outputs is updates to the organizational process assets. These include the actual performance against the plan, the key lessons learned during the project, the risks identified, the updates to the skills and experience of the team members, etc. Updating these assets is mandatory as it helps the organization gain maturity and learn from the experience. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Here is a quick recap of what was covered in this lesson. Project integration management involves unification, consolidation, articulation, and integrative actions that are crucial for successfully completing the project. Integrating the project activities is the key role of a project manager. The project team focuses on completing the project activities, and the project sponsor warrants the team against unsolicited changes. Benefit measurement methods ascertain the costs and benefits of undertaking the project, while constrained optimism methods rely on mathematical modeling to select the best projects that achieve business objectives. Various project integration management processes are develop project charter, develop project management plan, direct and manage work, monitor and control project, perform integrated change control, and close project or phase. Hello, and welcome to CAPM Certification course offered by Simplilearn. In this lesson, we will focus on project scope management. Let us begin with the objectives of this lesson. After completing this lesson, you will be able to define project scope management, differentiate between project scope and product scope, identify the key terms used in project scope management, explain work breakdown structure, describe the project scope management processes. In the next screen, let us take a look at Project Management Process Map. There are 47 processes in project management grouped into 10 knowledge areas and mapped to 5 process groups. In this lesson, we will look at the second knowledge area, that is, project scope management and its processes. Let us begin with the first topic of this lesson, that is, project scope management. Project scope management includes the processes required to ensure that a project comprises all and only the work required to complete the project successfully. The project scope management is concerned about the scope. What is not there in the scope is also clearly identified. In the next screen, let us look at the key activities performed under project scope management. Let us look at a few of the typical activities that happen as part of the project scope management. Constant monitoring is essential to make sure that all the project work is being completed. The gradual, uncontrolled increase in scope of the project is referred as scope creep. It is necessary to define the project scope boundaries and not let people randomly add to the project scope. Gold plating is doing more than what is required as part of the project scope. This has to be avoided in projects. As per the published statistics about projects done globally, less than 40% of projects can be considered successful. Therefore, the focus should be on what is required rather than squandering around with what is not required. 40% might be considered less, but a project is classified as successful only if it meets all its objectives and is done within time and cost budgets. In the next screen, let us understand the differences between product scope and project scope. Project scope management deals with managing both the product scope as well as the project scope. Product scope refers to the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. The word product may also include creation of a service. For example, in the banking industry, each of their services is called a product. Likewise, a savings account is one of their products. Mutual fund is another. On the other hand, project scope is the work that needs to be accomplished to deliver the output of the project, which could be a product, service, or result with the specific features and functions. For instance, to deliver a product, you may also need to produce a requirements document or a design document. These are not part of the product scope, but it may very well be part of the project scope. In the next screen, let us discuss a few key terms used in the project scope management. WBS stands for Work Breakdown Structure. It means breaking the project deliverables into smaller and more manageable components called work packages. The last level of work in such subdivision is called work packages, and the whole structure is called WBS. For example, a typical software development project would have various activities, like finalizing requirements, designing the new system, coding, testing, and going live with the new system. Each of these translates into high-level deliverables, which can be further subdivided into smaller activities which are more predictable. WBS Dictionary, like any dictionary, contains the explanation of the terms used in WBS. A typical WBS dictionary has details like the control account, name of the work package, description of the work package, resource assigned, if there are any assumptions or dependencies to complete the work package, the due date to finish the work package, technical dependencies, and so on. WBS Dictionary is useful for the person or group working on the work packages as it further elaborates the decomposed work package. Control account is a level within WBS at which management wishes to exercise control. For example, perform earned value analysis, track performance, etc. In the next screen, let us cover work breakdown structure in detail. Along with the scope statement and the WBS dictionary, the work breakdown structure forms the scope baseline of the project. That is, it should reflect the entire scope of the project. Any deliverables that are not reflected in WBS are not part of the project. The creation of the WBS should involve the whole team. The creation of WBS creates common understanding about the scope and therefore leads to team buy-in. During decomposing the deliverables, you must ensure that each level is complete. That is, it includes all the work in the project before you start to decompose further. Decomposition continues until the lowest level deliverable cannot be logically subdivided further, or they can be estimated with reasonable accuracy. WBS is a deliverable-oriented decomposition. It should only contain deliverables and not activities. While developing the schedule, converting the deliverables into activities is one of the problems as WBS does not contain activity-level details. Concept-based questions on work breakdown structure can be expected in the exam, so it is essential to have a clear understanding of the concept of WBS. In the next screen, let us look into an example which shows how WBS is derived. Work breakdown structure of a core banking software development project is given on the screen. The scope of the project has been divided into WBS elements, like requirements documentation, design and architecture, code, test, and go live. Further, these elements are decomposed into work package level to make it easier to manage the deliverables in terms of scope, cost, and time. It also helps to estimate or assign the specific work packages to team members or groups. The design and architecture has been decomposed to model and prototype. Similarly, code is decomposed into work package 3.1 and 3.2, test into work package 4.1 and 4.2, and go live into product installer and warranty sheet. WP 3.1 can be represented as Model 1 and WP 3.2 as Model 2. Similarly, WP 4.1 may be test strategy document and WP 4.2 a test plan document. The number here indicates work breakdown code. In the next screen, Let us discuss how project scope management is actually accomplished. There are 6 project management processes, which are part of project scope management knowledge area. These processes are plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, validate scope, and control scope. The first 4 processes, that is, plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, and create WBS, are part of the planning process group, and the remaining 2 processes, validate scope and control scope, are executed as part of the monitoring and controlling process group. In the next few screens, we will look at each of these processes in detail. Let's begin with plan scope management. Plan scope management process creates a scope management plan that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. It is usually the starting point of the planning processes on a project. Understanding the scope and how it will be managed is fundamental to planning the other aspects of the project. Let us review the list of inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides other subsidiary plans and will help guide the scope planning activities on the project. The Project Charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which may help determining the approach for the scope management. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Meetings may be organized to determine the scope management plan. Everyone responsible for the project scope management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. The scope management plan describes how the project scope will be defined, like who will be involved in the process, whose inputs will be sought, what techniques may be used to get these inputs, etc., developed, that is, in what form will the scope be elaborated and documented, monitored and controlled, and verified. The plan may also describe how WBS will be created from the scope statement, how changes to the scope will be managed, how deliverables will receive formal acceptance, etc. The Requirements Management Plan is a subsidiary of the Project Management Plan that describes how requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. A requirement is voiced by a customer or a stakeholder, whereas scope represents what the project team will do or deliver in order to meet that need. The Requirement Management Plan may also describe how the configuration management of requirements will be carried out, how they will be prioritized, how the metrics will be used to rationalize these choices, and how the traceability of the requirements will be maintained throughout the project. You may get questions in the CAPM exam based on the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of plan scope management. So, understanding of these topics will help you to answer concept-based questions correctly. In the next screen, let us look at the second process, collect requirements. Collect requirements is the second of the 6 project scope management processes. It is the process of defining and documenting stakeholders' needs to meet the project objectives. Let us look at the inputs to this process. Scope management and the Requirements Management Plan provide clarity on how the team should go about collecting and documenting the requirements for the project. The Stakeholder Management Plan provides insights into the stakeholders' communication requirements and the level of stakeholder engagement needed. The Stakeholder Register may provide useful guidance about which of the stakeholders could provide the requirements for the project. It is very important that all the stakeholders' expectations are captured adequately and represented in the requirements document. The Project Charter provides high-level requirements and expectations and may be used to detail out the requirements. Now let us look at the tools and techniques that can be employed to collect the requirements. It is important for the project team to use a combination of techniques that will give them maximum clarity about the requirements. Some of the techniques may include direct interaction like interviewing, forming focus groups, conducting workshops, and using group creativity techniques like brainstorming and group decision-making techniques. It may also include some offline activities like conducting surveys via questionnaires, etc. Observation can be a very powerful way to capture requirements that may be difficult to state or articulate. Prototyping is a powerful technique where the team comes up with a model or sample artifact that helps the users visualize and gain more clarity about what is being developed. Benchmarking is useful for understanding and learning from the industry and organizational benchmarks about the bare minimum expectations. Use of context diagrams and analyzing the documentation provided can also help in collecting requirements. Requirements documentation is one of the most important output. The second output of this process is Requirements Traceability Matrix. This table helps trace whether the work has happened on the requirements, whether all requirements are reflected in the final product of the project, etc. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Plan Scope Management process creates a scope management plan that documents how the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. It is usually the starting point of the planning processes on a project. Understanding the scope and how it will be managed is fundamental to planning the other aspects of the project. Let us review the list of inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides other subsidiary plans and will help guide the scope planning activities on the project. The Project Charter provides an overall context and the high-level product and project description, which may help determining the approach for the scope management. Enterprise environmental factors provide the organizational context to the project, including the culture of the organization, the infrastructure, key personnel, and so on. Organizational process assets provide inputs such as policies and procedures, historical information, and knowledge base. Now, let us look at the tools and techniques employed in this process. Expert judgment refers to input received from knowledgeable and experienced resources. Meetings may be organized to determine the scope management plan. Everyone responsible for the project scope management, such as the project manager, sponsor, customer, and other stakeholders, must attend these meetings. Now, let us look at the outputs of this process. The scope management plan describes how the project scope will be defined, like who will be involved in the process, whose inputs will be sought, what techniques may be used to get these inputs, etc., developed, that is, in what form will the scope be elaborated and documented, monitored and controlled, and verified. The plan may also describe how WBS will be created from the scope statement, how changes to the scope will be managed, how deliverables will receive formal acceptance, etc. The Requirements Management Plan is a subsidiary of the Project Management Plan that describes how requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. A requirement is voiced by a customer or a stakeholder, whereas scope represents what the project team will do or deliver in order to meet that need. The Requirement Management Plan may also describe how the configuration management of requirements will be carried out, how they will be prioritized, how the metrics will be used to rationalize these choices, and how the traceability of the requirements will be maintained throughout the project. You may get questions in the CAPM exam based on the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs of plan scope management. So, understanding of these topics will help you to answer concept-based questions correctly. In the next screen, let us look at the second process, collect requirements. Given on the screen is an example of the requirements traceability matrix. It lists all the requirements recorded in the requirements documentation in the first column. In the subsequent columns, it traces how the requirement is being met by specific sections or objects in the subsequent stages. In case of a software development project, the requirement about enabling multi-user access may require changes in multiple places. These are specifically called out in the columns titled Design, Coding, Testing, etc. This ensures each requirement is specifically addressed through all the stages of the life cycle and also provides a backwards traceability by clarifying why a particular change is made at each stage, that is, which requirement is driving these changes. A typical question in the CAPM exam can be one related to the creation of WBS. So, understanding the requirements traceability matrix will help you to answer concept-based questions. In the next screen, let us look at the third project scope management process, Define Scope. Given on the screen is an example of the requirements traceability matrix. It lists all the requirements recorded in the requirements documentation in the first column. In the subsequent columns, it traces how the requirement is being met by specific sections or objects in the subsequent stages. In case of a software development project, the requirement about enabling multi-user access may require changes in multiple places. These are specifically called out in the columns titled Design, Coding, Testing, etc. This ensures each requirement is specifically addressed through all the stages of the life cycle and also provides a backwards traceability by clarifying why a particular change is made at each stage, that is, which requirement is driving these changes. A typical question in the CAPM exam can be one related to the creation of WBS. So, understanding the requirements traceability matrix will help you to answer concept-based questions. In the next screen, let us look at the third project scope management process, Define Scope. The next process in the project scope management is Define Scope. Define Scope is the process of developing a detailed description of the project and product. Collect requirements lists for all the different requirements or needs expressed by the stakeholders. Define Scope deals with the detailing these requirements and determining what will be in the scope of the project and what will not be. It belongs to the planning process group. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The Scope Management Plan provides the details about the process of capturing and documenting the scope of the project. Project Charter, which describes the business need of the project, and requirements documentation developed as part of the collect requirement process also form inputs to this process. Organizational process assets are also a part of the Define Scope process. Organization template may be used to write the project scope or refer to the lessons learned from previous similar projects. For projects which have product instead of a service as an output, product analysis is a commonly used technique. This defines what is required in a project's product. Alternatives generation is a technique used to see if the project requirements can be completed in a different way, similar to lateral thinking. Expert judgment is a technique using an expert, may be an external consultant to look at various requirements and come up with the project scope statement. In order to define the scope, you may also conduct specific workshops that are facilitated to generate ideas around the project scope. The output of this process is the project scope statement, which describes in detail the project's deliverables and the work required to create those deliverables. Therefore, the project scope statement has project's product scope description, product acceptance criteria, project deliverables, and project constraints. This process also results in updating the requirements documentation and requirement traceability matrix developed earlier. Let us look at the next process, Create WBS. The final planning process within scope management is Create WBS. Create WBS is the process of subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. It belongs to the planning process group. The WBS is created with project scope statement and the requirements document as input. The Scope Management Plan provides the details about the process of capturing and documenting the scope of the project and how the deliverables should be decomposed in the form of a WBS and how it should be maintained. The templates and standards related to the industry and the specific enterprise may be useful in creating WBS. If there is an organization's template for writing down WBS, that is also used. The other two inputs are organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Decomposition is an important technique used in this process. In decomposition, the project deliverables are subdivided into smaller, more manageable components until the work and deliverables are defined at the work package level. The work package level is the lowest level in the WBS and is the point at which the cost and activity duration of the work can be reliably estimated and managed. The level of detail for work packages vary as per the size and complexity of the project. Another technique used is expert judgment. The output of this process is scope baseline. The project scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary are collectively referred to as scope baseline. Scope baseline is part of project management plan. This process also results in project document updates. Implementing WBS may result in getting more clarity about the requirements itself. The requirement document or the project scope statement developed earlier should be updated. In the next screen, let us look at the Validate Scope process. Validate Scope is the process of formalizing acceptance of the completed project deliverables. Validating scope includes reviewing deliverables with the customer or sponsor to ensure they are completed satisfactorily and obtain formal acceptance. Validate scope is closely related to quality control as well. However, scope validation is primarily concerned with acceptance of the deliverables, whereas quality control is primarily concerned with correctness of the deliverables and meeting the quality requirements specified for the deliverables. Quality control is generally performed before scope validation, but these two processes can be performed in parallel as well. Let us look at the inputs to this process. The Project Management Plan provides information about how the deliverables will be validated and accepted by the customer and other stakeholders. The requirements documentation acts as the basis on which the validation activity is to be carried out. The requirements traceability matrix documents how each of the requirements has been implemented and how it can be validated. The fourth input is verified deliverables and implies that the verification activity is first carried out by the team under the control quality process, and only then the deliverable enters the validation process. Work performance data gives more inputs on the deliverables that may be useful in validating and getting acceptance. The technique used to validate scope is inspection and group decision-making. Some of the typical activities that are done as part of inspection are measuring, examining, and validating to determine whether the work and deliverables meet requirements and product acceptance criteria. Group decision-making techniques may be employed if a team is working on the process of validating the deliverables. It helps in arriving at a decision by either consensus or majority or any other method. The output of this process is the accepted deliverable. Sometimes deliverable might be acceptable, and that results in another output, that is, change request. Due to the validation process, the information about the deliverables, which have been accepted, and any observations during the validation process may be recorded. Some documents, like report on status of the project's product, is updated as a result of this process, and listed as one of the outputs. In the next screen, let us look at the control scope process. Control scope is the process of monitoring the status of the project and product scope, and changes to the scope baseline. Controlling the project scope ensures all requested changes and recommended corrective or preventive actions are processed through the same Perform Integrated Change Control process. The inputs Project Management Plan, Requirements Documentation, and Work Performance Data are the same as the inputs for Control Scope and Validate Scope. Work Performance Data has information about progress of work on the different deliverables. The other input is Requirements Traceability Matrix, which lists the requirements included in the requirements document. Organization process assets also influence control scope in a sense where an organization would have standard templates for monitoring and reporting scope-related updates. Scope control is performed using variance analysis. The variation is measured from the original scope baseline, which decides whether any corrective or preventive action is required. The key output of the control scope is work performance information, which is planned versus actual technical scope performance. If any part of the scope performance does not meet the acceptance criteria, it may result in change requests, which is the other major output of this process. All of these may result in updates to the project plan, as well as other project and organizational process documents. Business scenario-based questions on scope control can be expected in the CAPM exam, so understanding the concept of scope control is essential. In the next screen, let us look into a business scenario to understand this concept better. After reading the problem statement, click the Solution button to look at a possible answer. Let us now check your understanding of the topics covered in this lesson. Here is a quick recap of what was covered in this lesson. Project scope management includes the processes required to ensure that a project includes all and only the work essential to complete the project successfully. Product scope refers to the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result, while project scope refers to the work that must be performed to deliver a product, service, or result with the specified features and functions. Work breakdown structure breaks the project scope into smaller and more manageable pieces called work packages, which are easy to manage. WBS Dictionary contains the explanation of the terms used in WBS. The 6 project scope management processes are Plan Scope Management, Collect Requirements, Define Scope, Create WBS, Validate Scope, and Control Scope.